Well, here we go, everybody. Welcome back to the Bass Commissioners. Just a couple of regular Joes who feel like it's time for unification in the sport. We want to see the sport be the best it can be. You want to see the sport be the best that it can be. What does the sport need? It needs a couple of commissioners who are there to make the sport the best that it can be. We tackle the hard issues in the sport, and when necessary, we produce binding rulings that the organization's probably just going to ignore, but at least we get it out there on the record. Tonight, we've got a forward-facing Sonar Palooza. Now, I had to look up the word Palooza because I wasn't exactly sure what it meant. I hear it used all the time in different things, but a Palooza is a wild, out-of-control party, and that's what we got going on tonight. We've got a forward-facing Sonar Palooza going on tonight on the Bass Commissioners. Also, we've got several other important issues to talk about, perhaps a couple of rulings. You know, we typically have a ruling or two at least each time we do this. Do you have a comment? Do you have a question? Is there something in the world of bass fishing that the commissioners need to address? Shoot us a comment. Send us a DM on Instagram. Send us an email on our website, bass2wranglerspodcast.com. Leave a comment at the bottom of this video. But we want to hear from you. Send us your comments. Send us your thoughts. Send us your ideas. I'm your co-host, Keith Neiswanger, and I am joined, as always, tonight by Patrick Schaefer. Good evening, Patrick. What have you got for us tonight?
Well, we got a few topics to talk about tonight.
I've kind of billed the show tonight as a forward-facing live Sonar Palooza. I had to look up Palooza to make sure I knew what a Palooza was, but a Palooza is kind of a wild, crazy party kind of thing, and it kind of feels like what we do, right?
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
And it seems like a lot of other people are talking about forward-facing sonar stuff too, so might as well keep it going a little bit.
Yeah, I'd like to piss some people off tonight. Did I say that?
Yeah. Why not?
You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
I'll go with it.
All right.
All right, so our first topic is name one thing that forward-facing sonar is doing to better the sustainability of the quality of our fisheries for future generations.
Woo, that smells a lot like Randy Blockett right there. That sounds like something I heard him talking about this week. All right. So one thing that forward-facing sonar is doing to better the sustainability of the quality of our fisheries for future generations. How about if I answer that question with a question?
All right.
What does power poles do for the sustainability of our fishing for future generations? What does fluorocarbon line do for the sustainability of our fishing in the future? I mean, that's kind of you can ask that question, but what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, as far as help with the sustainability, it's kind of like you're saying. I mean, fluorocarbon line, power poles, all those different things. I mean, they're not really doing anything to help the fisheries, but I also don't think they're doing anything to hurt them. So,
yeah.
I mean, and I guess in a sense, you could say that power poles do help because I'm not tearing a bunch of vegetation out of the bottom of the lake when I go to drag my big anchor up that I'm having to drop in the water. I'm able to just put two poles down. But
that's a reach.
Obviously, you're digging there. That's a reach. But like fluorocarbon line, braided line, different size hooks. I mean, none of that stuff is changing the sustainability, but I also don't think it's hurting anything. So,
listen. I think that if you're talking about the sustainability of protecting our fisheries for the future, then you just stop holding tournaments. You just, you stop doing this kind of stuff. I mean, we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. I'll tell you right now that the person that buys a live scope and puts it on his or her boat. They also buy a fishing license. They also do the other things that we have to do, and right there, that's putting back into it. Now, that's kind of a weak answer, I guess, from the standpoint that everybody that fishes has to buy a license and puts, you know, uh, money back into the fisheries. But I was thinking about this. What does forward facing sonar do to better the sustainability and the quality of our fisheries for future generations? I'll tell you one thing it does. I think it takes pressure off the bank. You got people that used to, I mean, think about bank fish. And I really do think that we're starting to come to understanding that there are fish that live on the bank and there are fish that live offshore, and they may not be the same fish. But think about what forward facing sonar does to those bank fish. Those bank fish have been pounded for decades by tournament fishermen. And yeah, they still get fished. But I think that if you're talking about something that really is going to help sustain the fisheries for the future, I think the bank fish are seeing less pressure now.
I agree. I mean, there's been plenty of anglers that have said they love everybody with the forward facing sonar because now they're all offshore chasing all these fish and it's opened up the bank for them. So, I mean, I've heard a couple anglers make that comment. And, you know, you're right. I mean, it's getting people off of the bank. It's opening up different opportunities. And, uh, you know, obviously we got another question on here that I'll dive into a little bit deeper on what I was about. So I'm not going to ruin that question yet, but
Ruin that question. Okay, well I've got more. I again, I think that forward facing sonar has has lit a fire under a younger generation of anglers who might have only been on their computers. You know,
right.
I see it with the kayakers. I personally think that kayak bass fishing is going to save the sport fishing industry because it's getting very hard to afford a bass boat, as you well know. Uh, buying a bass boat is that's pretty expensive. I mean, they're getting
Yeah,
close. Bass boats are getting close to the price that I paid for my first house.
right.
So so, but I do think the kayak fishing is going to really help the industry a lot, especially the freshwater industry. And so and those anglers are really keyed into their live electronics, and I think it's going to keep anglers in the sport. That's more fishing licenses purchased, and that's more tackle purchased. And in terms of helping the fisheries, I think that the more anglers that we get in the sport doing what we're doing, because really you don't come into bass fishing. I mean, when you come into bass fishing, you're indoctrinated to catch and release. And I really like the kayak formats where they photograph and put them on the board, and they weigh. They don't weigh their fish; they measure them. I really like the format of kayak tournaments. I find myself watching a lot of kayak tournament videos, and so and these guys are live scopers, and these and or forward facing sonar guys, and so there. I mean, we want to sustain the fisheries. We need to get more people involved who have that feeling, that conservationist ideal. And I believe we're doing that. So, yeah, I do think forward facing sonar is helping the sport and helping it into the future.
Yeah, because like you said, that person goes out there and says, "Oh man, how cool is that to get forward facing sonar and use electronics to go catch fish?" Well, in order to do that, now I got to go buy a fishing license, and I buy a fishing license, which puts money back into whatever state you're in, and then they travel. Maybe they decide to travel to the other states because they really like fishing. I mean, I bought fishing licenses in, Arizona. I bought them in Colorado, and I bought one in Alaska. So I've gone a few different places and gone fishing and bought fishing licenses there. I didn't have to buy one in Hawaii, which was kind of interesting, but so it ventured me out to go fish other places, and the same thing because I just like fishing, but that could also happen, like I said, with this younger generation. And honestly, I never thought of it from that standpoint until this is a good conversation because I didn't even think about it from that standpoint until you just brought it up. Like you said, those kids that like to play video games, they look at that stuff and go, "Oh man, this is kind of cool,"
Yeah.
and away they go. So they start fishing and having a good time.
There you go. So I don't know that we need a ruling on this tonight. It's more of a discussion. It's not particularly a thing to rule on. But I just was thinking about this question because Randy Block had asked this question today. He's a big he's very much against forward facing Sonar, and I do feel he's hypocritical because he's got spot lock and he's got all the other stuff on his boat. I just don't think you can pick one technology and isolate it from all the others. So anyway, that's where this subject came from this week. And I don't want to give him any more credit than that, but I think we came up with some examples. All
Yeah.
right. Are you ready for another one?
Yeah.
I think the darn A rig needs to be allowed on all the professional tours. Why do the top professional tours not allow the A rig? Is it because it's too easy to catch fish?
So I was researching that today, and that's a couple articles I found. That's what it talked about, is that bass felt like it was taking the skill out of fishing. But what I don't understand is how is throwing an A rig. I mean, obviously, I understand the design is different, but how's it any different from throwing a crankbait, a spinnerbait, a chatterbait? You cast it out there, you reel it in. How's that any different? There's no skill in reeling in a spinnerbait. Yes, maybe you twitch it, maybe you stop, pause, or cadence. I understand that, but you can teach anybody to reel in a spinnerbait. So, or dragging a worm across a Carolina rig across the bottom of the lake. You throw it out there and you drag it. If you're drifting, you can let it drag on its own. So you're going to tell me that there's skill in that, but there's no skill in throwing an Alabama rig?
Well, you got to be careful with that Carolina rig. If you get caught pulling that Carolina rig, that's strolling. And as far I'm quite certain that strolling is not allowed either. It's not trolling, strolling. You're just dragging about. I mean, it used to be. I don't know if it still is against the rules or not, but anyway, that can be a subject for another time. But getting back to the A rig, I gotta believe. Okay, if it is that easy, I gotta believe there are guys on tour that would love to have some easy fish.
Right.
Love to catch. It's hey, big Bassin with Big Malone. He says it's a type of lure, so it should be legal. Boom. We may be moving towards a ruling on this tonight, and there may not be a whole lot of discussion. Now, look, I have talked to a number of guys. If you've never heard my interview with oh gosh, I got to remember his name now, Britt Myers. Britt Myers talked about the first time he ever used an A rig, and he and his partner made two casts, and they had a five fish limit of like 30 pounds in two casts because one guy hooked up on three and one guy hooked up on two.
Right.
And so, okay, I got to tell you, I've never experienced fishing like that. I've caught a fish on an A rig, but it's not. I have not experienced the easiness of it. I know Paul Elias taught some lessons a few years ago on the A rig, but I think it's going to be like anything else. It's going to get fished a lot. The fish are going to become used to it, and then it will be just one more lure that you throw under various conditions. I don't know. What am I missing?
said, I tried to look it up to see if I could find some good reasons for why it's banned, and I can't find anything. Like nobody can give me a logical explanation. And I know some other professional anglers that think it should be banned, and they agree with it not being in tournaments. But I don't understand why. I mean, it's banned in the Opens, the Elite Series, and then the Bass Pro Tour. But I'm pretty sure that in the
Invitationals?
Toyota Series tournaments,
Yeah.
you can use it. So why can they use it, but nobody else can? Like, if it's that big of a deal, I fished an A-rig. I've caught 3 fish. Well, I caught 2 and lost 1. I didn't go out there and hammer the fish all day long and just tear them up and catch 25-pounders and, a handful of casts. I mean, I had fun with it. It was cool. Which I'll get in this in a second, but I finally got to see my first fish actually swim up on live target and hit my bait. That was cool.
Was that on an A-rig?
Yeah, I was on the A-rig.
Nice. All right.
And it was fun for me, but it was like, again, that was the only fish I caught, and I threw it in a couple different brush piles. That was the only one that I got. I got one in another spot back in December, but I'm not just swinging them in the boat left and right, looking like the best bass fisherman that ever walked the face of the earth. So you can't tell me that it makes it so easy. It's the same. It's kind of like the live scope argument. I mean, it's cheating. Well, how's it cheating? It doesn't put fish in the boat. You still have to go find them and everything else. I mean, trust me, I run my live scope all day long, and I'm not stacking the fish in my boat. I'm still learning.
Hey, I got a question. Does Strike King make an A-rig?
Yes, I saw it today.
Oh, they do. Okay.
It might be new, but I looked at it. I was in Walmart earlier today, and I went through their very small fishing section because there's really not any. I didn't need anything at Walmart. I was there with my wife. But
it's right where I go. We're going to Walmart.
My wife had to go to something. My daughter had to go somewhere else. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go look at some other stuff.
Yes.
And so I saw it. It's got a big head on it, but it's a little different than most of the other ones I've seen. But yeah, they make an Alabama rig.
Okay, so I guess what I was getting at is it almost seems like you need one of these big lure manufacturers that sponsor tournaments to come out with an A-rig and say, "Hey, we want our A-rigs to play in these events." To me, that would change the rules. I don't know.
I agree.
Do you think we need to make a ruling on this? Is this something that we should rule on, that the A-rig should be legalized for all professional tournaments?
Yes.
It might not be very popular with the anglers themselves. Well, here's what I think. I think on the outside, you might get some pros saying, "Oh, it takes all the skill out of fishing. We don't want it." But when they're in that tournament and they are not on fish and they want to catch some fish, you bet they want that A-rig at that point. So We're ready to rule on this. A-rig should be the A-rig should be legal in all tournaments. Get your thumb in there. There we go. A-rig. The commissioners have spoken. All right, we got our first ruling of the night. Well done. Well done. Another binding rule that the organizations will probably ignore. All right. Okay, what have you got?
So I'm going to go into my forward-facing sonar subject because I know I told you the other day that I kind of had something to add into that.
Okay.
So I've been fishing a lot of new spots and on the lake, and I haven't been catching anything. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to go back to what I know, how I'd catch them before, and I'm going to go do that because I needed to catch my first fish in 2023, and my feelings were starting to get hurt because I wasn't catching anything. So I start driving, and there's a flat, and it falls off in this creek channel, and then it comes up on this flat. So I'm driving along the edge of it, and I'm looking at my side scan, and I see 2 dots sitting off the edge of the ledge. on side scan. I was like, I think the fish. From what I learned, I think those are fish. So I go down, I spin the boat around, facing into the wind now. I look at that spot, I marked it, I use my cursor, I move it over on the, and I mark a waypoint, and then I spin the boat around, I drive back to that waypoint, I take the forward-facing sonar at this point, take a look, and I can see fish swimming, and I say, awesome, there's some fish there. Then I hit my spot lock, I throw my Carolina rig out there, and within a couple casts, I catch a fish.
Nice.
So had I not had side scan sonar, the forward-facing sonar is not what made me stop at that spot. The side scan sonar played a factor. The fact that I could spot lock into the wind and keep my boat held in that same position because I was by myself. I could throw that out there, and I knew where the waypoint was because I scrolled over on my Humminbird Helix 12 and marked the freaking waypoint. And all I did was because I'm learning. I said, "Hey, I think those were fish. From what I've learned so far with side scan sonar, I think those are fish." So I turn around, I look at it with the forward-facing sonar, and I go, "Yep, those are fish." And I caught the one that you saw the picture of.
Now, wait a minute. Are you telling me that you used 2D electronics to locate a fish that you ended up catching?
Yep.
There you go. We got to outlaw 2D electronics then. We got to that 2D electronics must be outlawed. No, I'm kidding. I love it. You did see the fish on live electronics.
I could see him swimming.
Did you see him
So I was
swimming
like, okay,
toward?
there's fish there.
Swimming towards your bait? Did you see him move to your bait?
No, I couldn't then. I really just spun it and then looked and made sure I could see, them moving on the forward facing sonar. I'm like, okay, that's fish. And then I hummed the Carolina rig out there. And I think I made, like I said, I had the spot lock on, so I kind of drug it through there and then reeled in and made another cast and then caught that one. And then shortly after that, I started scanning around and found some brush piles that I did not know were there that I found thanks to my forward-facing sonar. So I started throwing the Alabama rig through those brush piles. And that, I was watching it and I was reeling it through and I saw it come up to the brush pile and I could see it and feel it catch the top of that brush pile. And I kind of popped it through there. And when I did, I saw that fish dart out from that brush pile and hit it.
Nice.
The bad thing is it was probably 4 to 5. It was probably a 4 to 5 pounder, and he was fighting less than that one I showed you the picture of, which that thing probably weighed a pound, maybe a pound and a half. I mean, he was like a little football, so I give him that. But so I thought, oh man, this is another little one, but that's cool. I caught it, so I was trying to muscle it in there, and I swung it this way. And then all of a sudden, it came up to the top of the water, and I realized he was bigger than what I thought he was. And I went to turn. At that point, I was in kind of a bad position, and it came off. But it was still cool for me to get to see that. But then after that, I threw on 4 more brush piles with the Alabama rig, and I didn't catch any fish. So if the Alabama rig is this easy thing to use and catch all these fish, well, it didn't work after that. So.
Very good. Very good. Well, we have got okay. So that's, I almost thought we had a ruling there, but we don't have a ruling on that. That's just your experience. But I mean, that's what I see. I get so, when you want to take forward facing sonar away, what's next? 2D?
Right.
Power poles? Spot lock? I mean, the sport is evolving. Evolve with the sport. Stop being that guy that sits on your front porch and tells kids to get off your lawn,
Right. Well, here's my other thing, too. If you don't like it, then don't use it.
Right.
But don't stop everybody else from using it just because you don't like it.
Right.
So,
Am I up?
You're up.
You might have kind of answered this a little bit. Oh, did you hear that? You might have kind of. That's some good California.
Good. We talk like that all the time in Texas.
Yeah. Very good. All right. So next, I got another forward-facing sonar issue that I would like to talk about, and I think it kind of ties into what you were just talking about. This is forward-facing sonar Palooza tonight. Uh, how is forward-facing sonar advancing the general knowledge of bass behavior? Now, on this, I really think forward-facing sonar is really helping. I read an article on Bass Fan this week about with Brandon Lester, and Brandon in the article is talking about what he's learned about brush piles from his forward-facing sonar, and it's just fascinating to hear the way he describes it. He talks about these brush piles being like drive-through fast food restaurants. The fish don't sit there all the time. They come, they feed, they go. And the way he described it, it just completely made the light bulbs go on for me. You know, I don't know how many brush piles are in a lake, but people fish them. And you might fish a brush pile and move on, or let me put it this way: I might fish a brush pile and then move on down and not catch anything, and then you might pull in behind me and catch one. And was it because I did something wrong? It might have been, probably so, but more likely what it was is that the fish just moved in because they were chasing bait or they were coming in to eat or whatever. Just like going to the drive-through. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, and that's one thing I've kind of figured out is that a lot of times you'll see these videos or you see these bass in fish tanks and stuff like that, and they're always suspended, or they're just, or not suspended, but sometimes they're suspended in the water column, and sometimes they're just sitting on the bottom, and most of the time they're not really moving. And I understand, obviously, they move when it's time to feed and all that kind of stuff, but what I've learned is that they're a lot more active than you think. Obviously, I know like during the spawn and stuff, they're sitting on beds and they're not. Other than chasing stuff off, they're usually just kind of hanging out. But I've watched a fish on my forward-facing sonar that I'm pretty sure was a bass, and that thing was moving all over the
Yeah.
place because I wasn't moving. And then I finally end up catching it, and and I'm like, okay. And I may not necessarily see it happen on the forward-facing sonar, but I catch that fish that I could see swimming around out there, and I know there's perch and bait fish and stuff swimming around too. But I'm realizing to me that these fish are a little more active than just hanging out there not moving.
When you watch a guy like Jacob Wheeler or DC Dustin Connell, and these guys talk about the milk run that they make on their brush piles, and you're thinking, man, they just go and go, but they know what we're talking about right here. They've learned this. They know that brush pile, they might be on it, and the fish might not just be there right now. They move to the next one. Eventually, they're going to find one where the fish are, and they're probably going to come back to the same ones that they didn't catch anything on because they know that these fish are going to use these piles, and then they're going to move out. And then maybe different fish will come in the next time.
Yeah, and I remember, I think it was the MLF tournament on Lake Fork 2 years ago, where Mark Daniels was hammering them, and he was talking about those fish just kept reloading. They just, more fish kept coming up. Just like you said, like a drive-through. They were steadily pulling up, and they would come up there to start doing their spawn, and he was catching them, and then he would leave that area and come back, and a whole new set of fish would reload in that area. Now, I'm sure there was probably times where he might have caught the same fish twice. I'm not going to argue that point, but he, there's more fish moving in,
Yeah.
and they move in, they hang out, and then they may spend a little time there, and then they're off.
Well, let me ask you this: you're a relatively new live forward-facing electronics owner. What have you learned from forward-facing sonar?
Well, kind of like I said, I figured out that they're not always just sitting there doing nothing. Sometimes they may not be heavily feeding, but a lot of times they're moving around, and sometimes you can have a ball of bait out in the middle of nowhere just hanging out. Doesn't necessarily have to be over top of a brush pile. I've also, like, I know some people, they go out and fish and they're like, all I look for, I pull up to this stuff and I look for the ball of bait on top of the brush pile. If there's no ball of bait, I leave. Well, I don't always see balls of bait, and I still catch fish out of it. And like I said, I see them swimming around, kind of in and out. I mean, they're not. It doesn't look like they're moving really fast. They're just kind of, hey, I'm gonna go. Let's go see what's over here, and then hey, I'm gonna go hang out over here for a second. And there could be anything going on down there. I mean, it could be the pinging of the sonar, possibly. It could be noises or anything like that that's making them just kind of move around. But I don't think they just hang out in just one spot and stay there. I mean, just kind of like you watch some cows out in the field. They'll lay down for a little bit, and they'll get up. They might move 5 feet and then lay back down again. They can reposition. So, but that's what I've learned is, for one, there's a lot more stuff swimming around in the water than I thought there was.
Okay.
So even those times you pull up to a spot and you're like, there's nothing here. I promise you can scan around and see something swimming.
Yeah.
But there's fish in different levels. I mean, that brush pile that I caught that fish in, it was probably, I'm going to say, at least 8 foot tall, roughly.
Okay.
And I caught that bass was in the top of it, or unless he shot it from the bottom. But even if he did, still, he shot it from 8 feet to come up there and hit that A-rig.
Yep.
I didn't catch it, till right after it came. I saw him shoot out of the top of it, but I don't know where he was at in that pile as far as. But yeah, I think it's been interesting looking at all the different stuff and watching fish interact and watching fish swim up to your bait, and they'll swim all the way up to it. Sometimes you'll see them; it looks like they're swimming with it. Sometimes they'll run up there and see what it is, and peel off.
Yep. We got time for one more. You got something?
I do. So the no information rules. Does the sport need them?
Woo-hoo-hoo! That's a good one. I'll jump on that first.
All right.
Probably going to make people mad, but why not just leave it open for everybody? Leave it open for everybody. That's a stupid thing to say because all right, you could literally have a guide come out on the water with you and show you where to fish, I guess. But so much controversy this last year about somebody getting information, and why do we even need that rule? I mean, how extreme would it get?
I don't think it should be illegal for the anglers to talk amongst themselves, for sure.
Right.
Like if you and I fish a tournament and you're in your boat and I'm in my boat, we come back that afternoon and you and I want to sit and talk about what we did, and I'm like, man, you're like, I had a great day catching them on this, and I'm like, man, I didn't catch anything, and you say, well, hey man, try throwing a trick worm and brush piles in 8 foot of water. That's where I've been catching mine. Okay, who cares if we talk about that?
But I do see where it's necessary, because it could get out of hand. I think you've convinced me on that. I think that as commissioners we can allow the no information rules to continue. Well, I think that was a Palooza. Again, I haven't been a part of too many Paloozas, but I think that was a Palooza. I talked about a lot of forward-facing sonar issues, and I think we have shown without a doubt that forward-facing sonar does have positive aspects for the sport. Lots of positive aspects for the sport. It makes the sport better. That's what we're trying to do. All right. Well, thanks as always for joining in. Please remember to like the video and leave a comment down below. Hit the subscribe button too. Why not? Subscribe. You get more content like this. Oh boy. Until next time, keep both hands on the wheel. Keep those life vests zipped and clipped, and we'll talk to you again very soon.